but he's not here, so I have to do it. So I'm not good at it. We always pass with everything.
So I'm trying to get through.
Really good, so.
Trying to get through.
Well, and it's, yeah, this time. Right? All right, I have this one live already, I'm not turning it off.
Okay.
Just so you all know, it is live right now. Sorry.
She'll still be in this PDF.
No. It will.
Couldn't find that new print of the dark on it, but this was a
She loved to get the popcorn. I saw her eating that, and I thought she was like, oh, you just came to leave in the middle. She's got popcorn.
It's the same thing we already got in that.
It's fine.
Okay, time is 6 o'clock. We're going to call this city council work session to order. Can I have, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we need a roll call vote? Can we just do all in favor?
All in favor? Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. And we'll start with topic number 1, the discussion about the citizen survey.
Yes, good evening. So we have Torchlight Insights here, and they are going to be doing our citizen survey that was approved in the budget. So they have a whole agenda of this workshop with you all tonight, and this is really to help get your feedback on what you're hoping to get out of that citizen survey as we go into our strategic planning process. So I am going to turn it over.
All right, I think they are still getting our presentation pulled up, but just wanted to take some time to introduce ourselves and get so that you can get to know us, and then obviously turn it and really get to know you all. I know some of you are new to this room, right? And so we'll want to ask you some questions about your desires for Pleasant Hill and what you see from your perspectives as you represent the community. And so, but first of all, I'm Julie Steenson and my teammate Kate Bender. So we are co-founders of a small consulting firm that deals mostly with data. We work almost exclusively with local governments and nonprofits to help really maximize data and how it's collected and how it is used. We're a team of 4, so Kate and I, and then we have 2 colleagues. And we've been in business now for 4 years, and prior to that, though, all 4 of our teammates have had some kind of career within local government ourselves. And so whether that is working within administration, serving on boards, things of that nature, we've been in and around local government a long time, and so we sort of uniquely understand the inner workings of how local government serves communities. And what we want to do here with Pleasant Hill is really, in a sense, as you're moving into your new term, your strategic plan later in the summer, what is the community saying? And I love that so many people from the community are here as well, because we want to make sure that we are collecting this data and it represents the voices of the people walking around every day and who live in the community and have a stake in what happens in this room and broadly. So what we're going to do today is we'll walk through some questions, really pointed questions about some very specific topics, but we'll also welcome any comments or anything that you think, you're thinking right now that you would want to know from the community. This is that opportunity to get that mathematical, and data-based, response from your community and understand a little bit more about their wishes for the future of Pleasant Hill. So we can move forward a little bit on the slide deck. This is our team. This was us taking photos of us pretending to work, but we work really well together, and we've done a few surveys so far as a team. Roland Park, Kansas, most recently, Westwood, Kansas, and St. Joseph, Missouri. Really, all of three of those were in service of a larger planning document, whether that was a master plan or a comprehensive plan, or a more strategic plan, a councilmatic strategic plan. And so all of the data was not just data that sat on the shelf, it actually then fed into a plan and helped give the community's voice to that plan. So those were our the work we've done, and then here we are as a team. Obviously, Kate and I are here today. Lauren is kind of our data wizard, and she will be working on the project with us. And then Rwanda is local with us as well, local to the Kansas City Metro, and we may pull her in on some data analysis and things as well. So we come together as a team and work as a team. I'm sure as you all will as you work through your terms. So that's who we are, and then we're going to go through some quick slides about what is a community survey, what can you use it for, and then the process to gather this information from the community, and then we'll open up and get some conversation going amongst you all and get some perspectives on what you would like to know from your residents. All right, so that's a little bit about us as a firm, and now we'd love to know a little bit about all of you as well. And so, really, just quick introductions. You don't have to draw this out, but your name, length of time on the council. If that's one day, that's fine too. What you do outside of this building. And then I love to always ask, what is a hidden gem in your community, whether it's a restaurant or a place or a bar, I don't care, wherever you like to go, or what you like to do, a park, the park, or wherever it is. What's your hidden gem in Pleasant Hill? And then to kind of tee up this conversation of strategy, what are your biggest hopes and dreams for Pleasant Hill as a community? So you're on the council for a reason. What do you want to see happen for this community? So whoever wants to go first.
Well, I'll go first.
Okay,
All right.
there you go.
I'm Dr. Zachary Patterson. I own, half of Pleasant Hill Animal Clinic. I've been wanting to be on council for a while. The time just never was right. But, I've lived here my whole life. My people have lived here for 150 years. This town's very important to me. Both keeping with what it used to be, and what it still is, but things have to change. So we have to balance that, And so for me, I really like my hidden gem. It's not really hidden, but I like the new park over there, the Hill. I coach youth football for 12 years now, and practicing on turf this year, that was a huge game changer because we play in a mud hole half the time, and it just especially when the kids are little. They don't like getting wet and muddy, and when they get older, then they're all about it. But no, that would be probably one of my favorite things about this town, among many.
My name is Jessica Elliott. I am new to council. I am a former city clerk here in Pleasant Hill. It's been about 5.5, almost 6 years. I was for about 5 years. Outside of that, I work for a technology data company in Kansas City, SS&C, which is formerly DST. That's what I do. I do that outside of here. My favorite place here in Pleasant Hill, I really wanted to be on council to represent my precinct. I feel like we're very underrepresented, and I wanted to to bring that here. But my favorite hidden gems are probably, I like the cafe and I like the trailhead where I could just kind of go over here at Oak and Boardman and step out and I'm in the trail. And then my final one is my church.
Okay, my name is Don Donovan. I'm the mayor this is our second meeting, so it's only been a couple of weeks. I was on city council previously for 4 years. I am the master scheduler for Collins Aerospace out in Lenexa, Kansas, outside of here. But I also wear a lot of other hats inside the community, and one of which is for my hidden gem for Pleasant Hill is the Pleasant Hill Theatrical Guild. That is a community theater group that we started, and a lot of our shows that we do, we try to do 3 to 4 shows a year over at the United Methodist Church. My hope or dream for Pleasant Hill is to build up our economy here, so that way we don't keep seeing budget issues, and hopefully we can get some more retail and sales in here and kind of make Pleasant Hill a destination where people want to come here to spend their money.
I'm Brenda Zoomer. I'm a real estate agent here in town, and I've lived here 13 years, I think. I've been on council 1 year. My hidden gem is probably, it's the community outreach, the mission work that everybody does. Everybody's got a huge heart here, and that's what I see every time I think of Pleasant Hill. It's just everybody's givingness and devotion. Mm-hmm. My hopes and dreams, I just want to see it continue to grow, but for somehow keep the heart, and that's our trick. That's mine.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you all. That gives me a really good picture of what Pleasant Hill is. And this isn't my first time down here. I've been to the Cass County Fair several times and come down to Main Street here. So it's great that you have a sense of what the community is already. And so you can ground whatever the community becomes in what you know it is already. And I love this picture that you all have painted of it as a place where people really want to live and gather and be, and whose families have been here for generations. Even just reading, the history of when you moved the town to be close to the railroad, because you knew that was the key to economic development at that point. And I think that's a really important piece of the history to know that this community is willing to move with what is necessary to make it last into the future. And so as we go into this work and as you move into strategic planning later, I think that's a really good grounding place to start, is that, Pleasant Hill is a place that can evolve and is already well loved. And so how can you take that love and expand it? So I think at this point...
Do you have one more right here? Or?
Yeah, we're missing Pat and I.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so I'll take over from Julie here and just give you all a little background, and don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this is, a community survey. Some people have a ton of experience in this area. Most people, I would say, do not, and so I want to make sure you all know up front kind of how we're going to go about this and the process before we get into talking a little bit about the type of information we want to gather. So the resident surveys are a real passion of Julie's and mine. When we worked for Kansas City, Missouri, we ran Kansas City surveys for about 10 years and had a chance to work with lots of other community partners who did that as well. And so we've had a lot of experience, not just creating surveys, administering them, analyzing them, but also the favorite part of ours is figuring out how best to use them, how the data can best be useful, because definitely our opinion that there's no use asking people questions that you're not going to do anything with, right? It's always their time, waste your time, and also can actually, hurt trust people if they feel like they're being asked something that's not going to be used. So, but, we see some major opportunities. There's always understand resident experiences with city services.
it's a chance to really, in one fell swoop, understand a lot of different perceptions of different services. And even to assess, where perceptions are higher versus lower. And I'm sure you all we have some questions about that I'm sure you all will be able to give us some indicators of what you already hear in the community. Gauging resident priorities is huge, especially going into a strategic plan. So there's questions that we can ask on the survey that aren't just about satisfaction, but actually asking residents to help identify what they think top priorities should be across similar types of issues. And that we find can be a really helpful piece of analysis to help, think about how are we going to structure our goals when we get to that point in time. And then it's really to complement other data and knowledge about your city and residents. You all have a ton of experience living here, meeting this community in various ways. So this doesn't really take place in any of that. Instead, I think it comes alongside and can help, affirm or maybe contradict some ideas you have. A lot of times I think it really just sort of diversifies thoughts that you have. Oh, I thought this, but I didn't know this was also true. Or I thought this, I didn't realize that there were differences. When you look at age group, there's different perceptions, stuff like that. That's really hard to get a sense of kind of person to person. So that's kind of the why. I want to be clear again that a survey is not end all be all. We think it's a really, really important piece that can help a lot of cities in their planning efforts, in their operations, especially in those areas of agreement and disagreement. That's another thing, is like there's really strong consensus around some things, and other things there's really split perceptions. Sometimes those are the type of things that come up in conversation, and it feels like everybody is like, no, everybody feels this way. No, everybody feels this way. And it's like, you look at a survey, turns out there's some kind of good subgroups here of people who feeling different things. Identifying those relative strengths and weaknesses, and then again, providing insights to consider in tandem with other information. It's not going to give you, of course, a complete picture of the needs. This is a perception survey, right? And that's a huge part of what drives, I think, in our opinion, should be a driving part of city government, a thing that's brought into city government. But for instance, in general, residents don't know the maybe asset rating of your streets. They know their experience driving them it. They know what they think is a priority. But things that get into other data sources, right, like asset management, programs that you offer, knowing how many people come to certain things, that's all really good information as well. That again, the survey itself won't provide. That I think can help complement. Also, if it comes out and there's a few things that are like, wow, these are all kind of the same level of priority, that's where it comes back on all of you to, blend this in with other information and make those hard decisions. It's not going to necessarily give you a completely, right ordered, often it's not that easy, but it does, I think, really help sift across different areas and give a sense of where the community is at with things. So the last year that you all did a community survey was 2007, 2008. And just in talking a little bit with city administration, they actually had a great story about a notable use at the time, which was around a priority coming out of the survey around street repair. And based on some funding structural changes at the time, there was an opportunity to dedicate some more funding. And, in part because of that resident perception, that decision was made to make that investment. And that's the type of story that we love to hear. And, it's one we've heard in other communities too, right? But it's great to hear that you all have that history. And I think that's the exact type of thing that you could use this survey for. Again, especially going into a strategic plan where you're really actively trying to think about what to prioritize. So this is the wonkier part about methodology. So as in a bigger city, you might do a community survey using sampling, right, where you're just surveying a portion of the population. A city the size of Pleasant Hill, really, sampling doesn't make sense. It's a better practice, and this is done, Roland Park, very similar size to you all. This citywide survey, Westfield even smaller, obviously, citywide survey. So the survey will be open to every resident. The more the merrier. We want as many people to take it as possible. And actually, really will rely on all of you and everyone else in this room to help promote it. As we'll talk about, we've got a plan about how to get the survey out and in front of people. There's a lot of different levers we can pull, but we also know that the best, I think, advocates for something like this are the people within the community. We will validate that residents of, obviously you put a survey out, it's on the internet, yes, theoretically anyone can come and take it, but we will validate it using residential addresses, which will strip from the data don't have any need to use it for any analysis purpose, right? This isn't about identifying anyone as an individual. We'll just use it to validate people are part of the community. And for those, if we get responses that are outside the community, because you may get people who are like, well, I don't live here technically, but I'm in Cass County and I shop here. We don't throw those away necessarily. We can keep those and kind of segment them if we get a number of them.
So one of my questions was going to be if we have business owners or people that live just outside of
Yep.
city limits or whatever,
Yep.
and they were to all, like, it's not going to be a deal where their data is going to just be disregarded. It's going to,
No.
okay.
But we want to make sure that we segment it out from residents and be able to tell the difference. So one of our questions that's on the survey is, are you a resident? And again, it's not about throwing out that data, it's just about being able to say this.
They could be a tiebreaker.
Do you have the ability to differentiate so we can break those up into subgroups that are outside of city limits, like people who live within like 1 or 2 miles of city limits?
Yeah, well, I mean, the address question is really intended to collect addresses for everyone, and so we can do it based on that. We also could add a question about, do you work in Pleasant Hill, or do you own a business in Pleasant Hill, something like that, to further distinguish the different perceptions that people are bringing in. So that can be really useful as well. We will take a look at, and look at the demographics behind the survey respondents and compare to the demographics of the population, just to be able to assess, are we getting a fairly representative group of people responding? I mean, I think that probably will be the case. That's been, that hasn't been a huge issue in the surveys that we've worked with, but if we do see some misalignment, we can either kind of look at that in the analysis and be really clear, like, oh, we had a bigger group of this subgroup, or we also can help promote it, in different subgroups, if that makes sense too. For instance, if, I don't know, we were missing a younger age group and we were like, let's promote it in the schools, as an example. And then we will have benchmarks available. That's a really important thing about a survey, is to be able to compare to other communities. And so we'll have comparative data available for Kansas City Metro, for kind of Midwest, and for the US. Not for every question. Benchmarks are sort of available for kind of the top, the most common questions that are asked. And we are doing a survey that's been customized to you all. So if we add in a question, there might not be an exact benchmark, but it is really, really helpful to be, because along with your own internal comparisons, that's what helps you see, like, okay, we're lower on, this issue. Well, guess what? Everybody's lower on this issue. So the question is, how much lower are we by comparison? So expect that will be a really useful thing as well. So just to speak to how we're going to get the survey out, and I'll pass this around. This is the cover letters that will be sent out with the utility bill. So actually this week. So we're on kind of a tight turnaround, based on the timing of when you all do your mailing. We actually are in a very good place in terms of having a lot of information already assembled, but we also have a good amount of time over the next couple of days to make tweaks, both to the communication and to the survey itself. So definitely nothing is set in stone. And this really, it looks fairly finished, but I do consider this a draft. Part of the reason we wanted to bring this to you all tonight is to get your eyes on it as both residents, as well as knowing this is coming from the city that you all represent. If anything in there doesn't make sense or any wording feels off to you or different, this is kind of based on, standard types of wording, but it's all flexible. As you can see, this will go to people. They'll have the QR code, also the URL that they can use. So that will be kind of a primary point of contact. But we also are in the process of putting together yard signs to put at some strategic locations, particularly around the rec center.
Was there city
Yeah,
property?
what are we doing that?
City property. Right, and not very many, to
Okay.
be honest. I think we're only going to order like 10 of them just to put.
Well, we just had
yeah.
a hour-long meeting about that.
No sign code. No, we're not trying to figure out the right
now.
And he's going to raise eyebrows now. And it's really, again, just to draw people's attention to it. If they were like, oh, I didn't look at that letter, or oh, I saw that, what is this again? And they're on about. And same thing, it'll just have a QR code on them, and we'll take them in. And when you go into the survey, you'll actually get the same type of language from the cover letter right off. So if that's your only context, you'll be brought into this is from the city, this is not the city's logo, so they're, some people are like, who is this? Who's asking me for my name?
Right.
As well as, the cover letter has, signed by city administrator, it has my name and contact information. We also used to, taking in calls from residents, most of them are just curious, is this a real thing? I got my call, yeah, it sure is, and then we also want to, again, I don't expect it to be a major issue, but we want the survey to be accessible to people. And so knowing that online is the most convenient format, it's the best way to get a lot of responses. If there are residents where it's just that that's not feasible for them for one reason or another, our plan is to have some copies at City Hall that they could take, but also to be able for us to take in, to do a survey over the phone with them.
Yeah, because we do have your Broadway Village, we have your seniors, and they're not gonna get an individual water bill, so they're not gonna get an individual notice of this.
Yeah.
It's a
And
window station.
if there were, I would say also if there are some specific discrete locations like that are like senior housing or something, we could also plan to bring some copies to the
Yeah,
city there
yeah.
and have them collect it and then we can pick them up. That's also a possibility. So
If someone I know, say my mom doesn't know how to use the computer, can I bring my computer to
Yes.
her and she
absolutely, yes.
it's not.
And then we'll also just promote it through other communications channels, all the channels that the city uses, website, social media. We've got other tools in the toolbox too, if we want to, we'll be monitoring the response. And so if we want to try to get in front of more people again, maybe there's a civic organization that sends out an email or newsletter. Maybe there's another group that's like, oh yeah, we'll remind people. So again, appreciate anybody, or neighborhood associations is another one, right? Or neighborhood groups, right? Like, I'll drop this link in there and remind people to take it. So any questions about that overall process? I think the next slide maybe has the timeline. So again, we're just wrapping up April here with getting the survey designed and together. The survey distribution, the time frame is a little bit loose. I would expect it certainly to be out there for all of May. A month might get us to a good number of responses. We may want to leave it open into June a little bit. We can be flexible on that, really. So. And then June, July is, for us to pull the data in, do the analysis, and then our plan is really to align the reporting of this with your strategic planning process. So the consultant who you are working with in the strategic planning workshop is actually someone we've partnered with before, know very well. So we're happy to kind of collaborate and make that very streamlined for you all. So. Any questions about the survey process before we open it up and actually gather some information from you all about your wants? We'll walk through the beginning and
All right, so thinking about what the actual survey will look like, and honestly, if you take the QR code, you can go right to the survey. It is live in its draft form, obviously. But this, as Kate talked about, some of the sections of the survey that will that we really wanted to point out is, we're going to have the perception of the survey or the community. These are the bigger questions about quality of life and about this is a community to work in and to live in. Some of them will be in some indicators of trust in the city government, trust in that things are getting done well, that growth is happening well. We will also ask some specific questions about city services themselves, and that'll kind of help with some of that budget prioritization and strategy around the city's service delivery. And as Kate said, we'll do prioritization. These will look at the emphasis that residents want to place on particular city service areas. We'll talk about revenue generators, and obviously I can tell that's a priority, and ask about what types of investment the community wants to make in order for it to receive the services that the city provides. We also ask, and these are honestly my favorite questions, a series of experiential questions rather. have you visited the park? Have you attended a meeting? Have you called 911? Have you done this and that? And those can honestly be great questions. They're typically a yes, no. And then we can actually divide that sample or that survey response into people who say, yes, you know what, I have called the police before. And that helps us kind of look at people who have called versus who have not. And if there's any difference in the perceptions or if there's any opinion difference in any of the questions. And so those are really interesting ways to divide and look at the survey. And then we'll collect a few demographic factors. Really, again, as Kate said, using age as a good example. We'll do some groupings of ages to see if there are different perceptions of the community based on whether you're 18 to 24 or 55 plus. And so that way you can kind of understand which group here are we needing to invest in and what city services are working well for some residents and not others. And so we'll ask a limited number of those for the survey. So, for these perception questions, we are really interested to know if there's anything you would specifically know from your residents about the experience of living in Pleasant Hill. Is there any question you would want us to specifically ask?
Well, the question I would have would be, can you guys utilize AI if we had, because I just looked at the survey, just an open form comment section. Can you use AI to kind of bring all that together? Because everyone's going to use different terminology and that sort of thing. Are you guys capable of doing that? Or okay.
Yeah, we do have, it's toward the end of the survey, but we do have an open-ended question in there that we were planning on applying.
Okay, well, I guess I didn't get to that.
Yeah, I should have said.
I kind of scrolled through most of it. It looks very comprehensive.
Okay, good. That's good feedback. So most of the questions will be on a 5-point Likert scale. That makes it easy to distinguish between someone who is really dissatisfied or, doesn't feel positively about something at the 1 and 2 level, and then someone who does feel good about it at 4 or 5. 3s, we often talk about our real opportunities to understand, is there maybe a communication gap? Are people just meh about something? And we've all taken surveys, right? We know when we put a 3, we're not really happy, but we're not mad about it. So those are really good opportunities. So the scale will be on the 1 to 5. We will allow also for a response of 9, which is I don't know, and it could be that they don't experience it. They really don't have an opinion about it, and that's okay too. We keep those separate. If you answer 9 on a question, we take those out for calculation, but we can also report on them being a percentage of don't know. Sometimes that's also an indicator. If you have a really high don't know, especially a city service, probably means no one knows about it. Doesn't even know the city's doing it.
Yeah, if it was the question was, have you been to a city park?
Yeah.
And we got a bunch of 9, then we know that hey, we're in trouble.
Yeah. I worked for the Kansas City's Park Department a long time, and I'd say that you probably need some signs. not yard signs. Yeah, if you get a lot of don't know, it's probably people are like, is that a city park? Do I go to a city park? Yeah, but Kansas City struggles with that too, with all of their parks. So, all right.
The only other question I had was, if we extend this beyond May, does it cost the city more money?
No.
Okay.
It's a fixed
Okay.
cost.
Yeah, fixed cost for it, and we can leave it open as long as needed. If there's any, I know the fair is not till July, but if there's any other community event that is happening that you think would be a really good opportunity to, put this QR code out. If there's a show at the church, let's capitalize on that if it happens within that May-June window. So, any thoughts on anything coming up or that?
Does the city have something down at the fair or no?
Well, that's going to be in July though, and so.
Yeah, that we should push it a couple
we
more months.
we would want this information before so
then.
that we
Okay.
have it for the strategic planning.
Yeah.
So it would literally have to be something next month that is going on.
Okay.
So I know the theater is, their next show is in July, so that's not going to be, I guess my thought would be the farmer's market
Yeah.
would be to have it there because that's where we should be getting a lot of traffic in May. Cruise night would be another one, yeah.
Yes, I
I
have it
think-
down here on
I
the-
think, having those signs out in like, down here at the gazebo or Gray's Lot would be, a good suggestion for
We can
that.
put it at the fairgrounds too, right?
Yeah,
Can we not? Okay.
yeah, I mean, I guess, are they having-
16.
it's May 16th? Okay, so, yeah, fairgrounds would be a good spot, because the rodeo would be there.
We have First Fridays this Friday, but it won't be ready by this Friday. will it?
Yeah, I think because it goes out in utility bill on Friday, right?
I don't know how many parents will be there, but it'll be.
Well, even if it was the first Friday in June, would that?
That's true.
Yeah, we could
So
do
that
that
would be,
too.
And I should have said, in addition to the yard sign, we could also do like just a flyer, because sometimes that's an easier thing to put up somewhere, the same thing, QR codes.
Kylie just mentioned, we could also put it on like at the concession stand at the complex. We've got a lot of things going on out there right now. I mean, not only, a sign, but
Right.
I mean, having like something up at the concession stand.
yeah.
You got the
Put
flyers?
a flyer up there with the
The
QR
QR
code.
code.
And you know what, as a youth sport parent, I would do anything. I'd take a survey and so forth. So, yeah, that's a good
I
one.
think it's a great place.
If we're talking about stuff like that, at the 2 dance studios would probably be another spot where you'd have parents just sitting there waiting for their kids to be done dancing. There's a library as well, yeah.
Yeah, these are great suggestions.
El Porta. That's where everybody goes, so.
You can put some signs up at the VFW and also the cemetery, since we have Memorial Day coming up in May.
All right, so next question on this slide is around city services. And we were curious, what services that the city offers do you all hear the most about? And especially those of you who are new, what did you hear about when you were campaigning and talking to residents?
Streets.
Yeah, it's gonna be mostly public works, I think.
Yeah,
And then,
Streets and water lines.
and maybe some codes enforcement stuff.
Okay. But as far as code enforcement, that's an interesting one. Do you feel, is there a specific thing that people were telling you about or that you felt you wanted to try to address with them?
Well, I mean, obviously, one of the things was with the temporary sign deal that we just, went through.
Okay.
So,
So kind of visual and clutter in the right of way and things.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we've done surveys before that asked about like the cleanliness of city streets or right of way, and so getting a sense of whether that's perceived well. So we can add something like that. Okay, and infrastructure, that's always a big one. Streets pretty universally are rated pretty poorly. But again, as Kate said, that's where you then take sort of the understanding the differentiation, like what are people saying in each different ward or precinct? What are people saying in, are people most dissatisfied with streets in a certain part of town, or is it more, are older people more satisfied, less, or younger people,
Yeah.
So it's a good opportunity then to look at, what are some of the differences.
So I guess with the streets, it would also be like sidewalks and stuff as well, right?
Yeah, we noted some new sidewalks going in on the drive-in, so are those city, or those private? That's right. Yes.
It's a sort of section.
I know.
Been over a year and they haven't done.
Been a little too long.
Okay. Mhm. Right. Any other city services or any questions you might specifically have?
Well, I guess one of my questions would be, have they had to call city hall, like customer service or whatever at city hall?
Yeah.
And I guess, the, you know, satisfaction with that call.
Okay, yeah. Keith's capturing those up there. Yeah, for reporting an issue with streets, how do residents do that now?
Report a concern or call.
Right. Any specific, I've got some of the categories up here, so anything with parks and rec or recreation
Parks and Rec
services?
is what I was going to say. I heard of-
So both certain programming provided, infrastructure in the parks, things of that nature.
Well, I think that should be a little more of an open-ended, just fill a form.
Yeah, so, I mean, because there's gonna be a question of like, have you participated or, have a child that's participated in a park and rec event or sport.
That's an yes or no, which is easy to analyze, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so both youth programming, adult programming, participated in the sport.
How were you how was it overall and I don't know, could you leave the other, last question be, if there's any issues, could you describe me?
Or if there's some kind of program that they'd like to see that we don't currently offer. Right.
You guys hear any frequent, well, gosh, I wish you all had a pickleball club or, do you have any of those type of?
We do now.
Well, yeah.
So,
I'm glad we found it.
Bowling alley.
Yeah. Bowling alley, I mean, I'd
We're not
back
sitting
in
on it, I
units.
guess.
Yeah, no, I'd go back to the
They
city
do both.
government for that.
Always reference it though.
Yeah.
Someday.
Someday.
Yeah, was there ever a bowling alley in town?
no.
Oh, no. Well, that's a real marker of a big town. Where was the closest one?
Here's
Early Summit,
Just like a roller skate.
All right, so economic incentives for a bowling alley. All right.
No incentives.
No, I know. All right, well, that actually is a good segue, and I think I'm gonna give Kate an opportunity to sit down, so for us to talk a little bit about economic growth. This is a hard thing to survey on, and there's some standard questions about what are your, perceptions of how well the city is managing growth, or how well Pleasant Hill is growing and the condition of economic growth. So there's some real standard questions, but I think we also want to dig in a little with you all to ask if there are any really specific things. So if Kate, I'll go up and scribe for you.
Yeah, so you can see the questions up here, but again, economic growth is something that is both needs to certainly be aligned with community perceptions and values, but also there's technical elements to economic growth that are kind of, overseen by the city, certainly even things about like, where do you have open land, what's the, storm shed look like, stuff like that that's outside most people's knowledge. So, but, I think a good way to think about how to ask questions about economic growth, it's also kind of a hard question to ask people because it's a big topic. And so it's like, how do you frame a question? And so I think we hope to understand a little bit about what do you feel like you hear from residents about economic growth, and what topics come up a lot, or what feedback do you feel like you've heard from them, and what input, this might be a hard question for you to answer, but is there input you can think of that you're like, it'd be really great to know this from residents on the economic growth side?
So I think the one thing is, what I think people are concerned about is getting a lot of big stores and stuff in town, and how that's going to change our small town feel, right? So it's that balance act of like, what is acceptable to bring in and to incentivize and not damage our small town feel that everybody has moved here for, right? So I don't know how to put that into a question. But that's why you guys get paid to do this, right? So, but somehow to quantify that, right?
Yeah.
Like what would be an acceptable, mix in order to be able to keep, to grow, but to keep that small town feel.
And I really want to know, like, what do you want to spend your money on here? Where do you want to spend your money here? And along with that, with economic growth, employment, what kind of jobs do we want to have here? As far as like industry goes, I know we're looking at some like light industrial and retail, and that's how do we bring jobs in here?
Yeah. When you said where would you want to spend your money, kind of like what types of shops and restaurants?
Yeah, what do you want to spend it on? What would you be willing to spend your money on here? That you would have to, that right now you have to go out of town for?
Yes, yeah, okay.
Well, I think that it's going to be really hard to frame this question. I think you could frame it as a multiple choice, but I think you could also leave it open-ended if the AI is that good. I think, why are people leaving Pleasant Hill and going elsewhere? And what are potential businesses that we can bring in that would keep them from doing that?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we need a Chinese restaurant. That's an easy answer.
Yeah.
But what of these bigger chains, what of those are feasible? Like, can we have a Johnny's Tavern here? And, that's gonna be a larger question with franchising and, what markets they're looking at and willing to do. But, so I don't know if you can make it a multiple choice and you could say, pick as many as you like, or leave it open-ended as a like fill in the blank. You guys are the experts on this, on surveys. So that would be my thing is, what are people, because we are getting an economic development council going.
Okay.
And so I think that having a question on there, giving us some sort of directive would be very helpful. It really would,
Yeah, and there are some good,
Don't put bowling alley on there because people will just pick it just
City's gonna build it. It's a town joke, really.
there are some good types of questions you can ask that ask about either prioritization of investment or sometimes like kind of how well your needs being met in these areas and listing them. I can look at a couple different ones, but I know of just one like that for Lone Park and yeah, can kind of help differentiate too.
As far as economic growth goes, we currently do have a pretty high tax base, or tax rate. How do you guys go about finding out, are people willing to pay more taxes to have certain services and that type of thing? I don't really know how to phrase that question.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
That
is a good
About the sales tax rate and is that hindering you from shopping locally as opposed to?
Yeah. That and the specific question around like revenue generation, that was another question we wanted to ask you all, which we can go on to that if you want. But we can also circle back if you could come up with something else around economic growth. But yeah, a survey is a really good opportunity to test not just prioritization, but interest in investment for anything. So like around specific elements, like we mentioned, like in parks, but also, willingness to pay for different revenue sources, willingness to consider them. So,
Right. Well, we've tossed around a use tax,
and
are people willing to pay for a use tax?
Yeah.
And under what circumstance?
Yeah.
And what for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what they would use it for, but what, the other thought is, if our tax, or if we have a use tax, would that be better than having a light industrial come in, or, like they really, I don't know how that's gonna work, but, but if they like it the way it is, but really wanna keep it, that's what's gonna happen.
Well, the problem is we're rolling this out in a week. And so if we're saying, hey, would you be in favor of a use tax? We have to be resolved on the options that people would have to choose from what that use tax would go towards.
Well, it's about paying the tax.
I'm in favor of infrastructure, but I think there's a broader conversation that needs to be
Well, there's a
had.
huge conversation.
Well, I
That's
think
what
that's what the hope with this was, to see what people, if they were willing to pay one, what they would, so then you guys would have that feedback
Right.
when you have that discussion.
Right.
Okay.
So if they said, we would be willing to pay a use tax if it meant that all our roads were gonna get fixed, or,
Yeah, but that's not a yes or no answer. That's a very complicated question at that point.
In the current draft, and again, this is sort of the wording before, we have one question that tests kind of willingness to support a couple different revenue sources, and you can change those up or add to the list. We just started with a couple different ones that have come up in conversation. And then we have another question about, I think it's importance in relative importance of investing in specific service areas. Given a revenue increase, which of these areas do you think, you'd like to see investment in?
Okay. So that gives us some guidance.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would help you understand, certainly, because I agree, if you make it too dependent on each other, in some ways you do want to know, even from the people who are like, I don't want a new tax, you do want to hear from them about, if you did have more revenue, where do they want it to go? Regardless of where that revenue is coming from. So but I think I do have a question around, we've heard about streets for sure. We've heard about parks, and there's kind of general government operations. Are there other things that you're I feel like we should be on a list of investment opportunities?
Water lines.
Water lines, okay.
Stormwater and curbs.
Stormwater and curbs.
I guess that goes with streets, but.
Water lines over sewer.
We have an aging water system. I mean, a lot of this town was built a long time ago, and then the rest of it was built much more recently. And so those lines, they're failing. And to tear them all out and replace them is not cheap.
Yeah.
And so realistically, something's got to happen there, or we can just keep patching them. But that's not an efficient use of city resources or our staff's time.
And would increase, in terms of potential revenue generators, would increasing utility fees be a feasible one, or is that not the one that should be?
Well, Krista, you want to comment on the rate study?
Yeah, so
Okay,
we're gonna be doing a rate study, but that is what's hard about having water lines on there, is that technically the utility rates should be the thing that pays for water lines. So that's what's
Because there's
hard
some people that live inside town that don't have our water,
Right.
so, they then would.
Yeah, and
That's why we talk about their enterprise funds, they're supposed to, but I thought we had a question on there about utility rates.
Yeah,
I think there was one on there, similar to what you're talking about, other fees and revenue generators was, through utility rates to help with that infrastructure.
Yeah, and that goes into the services, because that is something that I heard a lot about with the campaign season, is our water rates.
no, we're doing that rate study, so.
But just meaning that for a use tax, again, that would obviously, be up to, if that was one of them, again, hypothetically, that typically that's not what you use to pay for infrastructure though. And I say infrastructure, water and sewer, because again, you have folks that don't, those are supposed to be paid for within their own, what revenues that they generate. Because like I said, some people in town either don't, have sewer, so, I don't want my use tax money to go into sewer because guess what, I don't have it, or whatever it might be. Same with it, we have different people in town on different water services.
I'm just curious on the water, this is more from an analysis piece, but is it very clear, geographically we could distinguish. I'm just wondering if we need to have a question about like whether they have city water service or if we can distinguish that from the geographic nature of the responses.
You could probably do it geographically. I mean, we have what our boundaries are, because I think sometimes people do get confused. They may
Yeah,
not
it's hard
answer.
to question it.
Yeah, like, well, yeah, I live in
Yeah.
Pleasant Hill, and yeah, I have water,
Yeah.
but they might, not
Right.
remember that they pay their water to somewhere else.
It's a little messy.
Anything else that kind of on the revenue side, or again, going back to economic growth, economic development?
Don, what do you think about the tax and service we talked about? You want to put it on there? Tax and services?
Well, yeah, I don't know that that's gonna be a completely different type of,
That's a whole nother ballgame.
I don't know that that's something that the city can,
Well, it'd just be nice to have some polling information on.
yeah, I don't know that that's actually a
Imminent thing.
Yeah, a feasible deal with.
Okay. Okay.
I think there's a lot of state stuff that would have to be done in order for that to be a thing.
Okay.
All right, well, I think that, I don't know if you want to advance in the slides, I think I just went through that question. Revenue generation, I think, yeah, that takes us to the end. So, we appreciate it's time. This has been very helpful for us to get to know you all a little bit in the community, but also some really good ideas to help, flesh out the rest of the survey as well as I think the outreach. Really appreciate all of the great ideas on that. I don't think we have actually my email address is on this cover letter. I realize we don't have an email address on there, but it is, please do feel free to reach out to us, and we are gonna look to finalize the survey, in the next, I think we're gonna dive into it tomorrow, try to get it to a pretty good point, after Kristen and staff to kind of make sure we're checking all the boxes and test it. So we quick turnaround, but if there's something that you leave here and you're like, oh, I forgot to say this, feel free to reach out and let us know.
Well, we're fine tonight, so
Well, yeah, and I
blow it
think
right up.
we'll definitely rely on all of you and all of you to help spread the word about taking the survey. 'Cause the more opinions we receive and the bigger the response rate, the more you can really take it as, okay, this was really the voice of the community. So the more people who take it, the better.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to working with you all.
So I will entertain a motion to adjourn the work session.
I make a motion to adjourn the work session.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. The work session is adjourned.
We're gonna take like a short recess.
Yes. And we've got to rearrange.
We're gonna stop it.
We'll rearrange the